Hello everyone, I'm here, Linda Nurjana, and my friend Nabilah Parah will explain little with is the structure, language, and human consciousness. Okay, the first I will explain about relationship between language arbitraries and the unconscious of the human mind. Psychoanalysis, Lacan centers around his extensive insight furnished by linguistic and structuralism. Lacan's project was not merely to apply the sources of psychoanalysis, but rather to enable to mutual the interpretation of all these art of inquiry. He effectively employed this discipline, mathematics and logic, to reformulate account of the unconscious sources and his our account of human subjective in the terminology of the connection between signifier and the signified. Lacan theory of the language and the unconscious of the formulate in a widely known paper called the agency or insistence of the latter in the unconscious since Freud. Lacan is reacting implicitly again of psychological view of the unconscious as a locale of desire and instinct. And Lacan attempt to clarify this definition. Language thus is not consists of the various physical and somatic functions that receive it in the speaking subject. Language and its structure exists prior of the movement and which is in the prior to the moment at which the speaking subject makes its entry into it. Lacan seems to imply here that various elements which are immediately involved in an individual subject's making of visual image and the impression of the sensation together with basic association and sound and the meaning do not constitute language whose structure itself there. The unconscious, often treated as one structure of the mind, is in danger of being tamed and domesticated of the subserving the pedination of the coherent ego or self. The same centuries of theology, humanism, than enlightenment that it set out of subvert of the signification into which the child is born and which is a effect constitutes the child psychology as a network of signification by restituting the consequence within language by redefining it as a true language. Lacan return used to the sterling and revolutionary nature of the Freudian discovery or not is Lacan. Okay, that's all for the first presentation, and the next is the material of the algorithm as well as a signifier of signified use social language. Next, I will explain about why does Lacan use social linguistic algorithm as well as signifier and signified. Psychoanalysis as a discipline must borrow the method and the concept of modern linguistics. He also critique of modern linguistics from the psychoanalytic vantage point. At the outside of the essay, Lacan questions social assumption that there is nothing problematic about the bond between the signifier and the signified in a verbal sign. He provides as an example of the two signifiers is a ladies and gentlemen may refer to the same signified or be interpreted as apparently contradictory place name. Signification is always a process, a chain. None of element actually consists of the meaning its signifier insists in a meaning, and its process forward to the next signifier. Meaning is not fixed. There is a translating of the signified under the signifier. The formula is signifier and the significant Lacan gives the credit of discovering this formula to Saussure, although it's not found in that from in any of the Saussure lecturer. The beginning of modern linguistics can be recognized in this formula. The signifiers and the signified are seen the different orders. The arbitrariness of the sign was known even to the action. And the Lacan illustrate the classic how your signifier and the signified does three. And then Lacan view on the signifier. First of the structure of the signifier reduced to ultimate distinctive feature and the combining according to the law of the closed system. Second, the signifying chain. A ring is a ring in another necklace made of rings. And the last, the only correlation between signifier and the signified, simply the standard for a research into the meaning, as indicated by the very notion of usage. And the Saussure holds linearity to be constitutive of the chain of discourses, emotion of a single voice, horizontal position of our writing. Lacan says that linearity is not sufficient applied to the chain of discourse in the direction in which is oriented. Hinter his Paul refers its time when the terms are inverted. And the structure of the signifying chain makes evident the possibility that is insofar as it exists as a language to use in order to say something quiet other than what it says. Thank you. And the next is Nabila.
Hello, I am Nabila Farah, and here I would like to continue the presentation. For the next discussion is how symbols and any kind of tropes become the representation of unconsciousness. Well, Lacan was argue that so far as he have language in common with other subjects, that is to say, in so far as it exists as a language to use it in order to signify something quite other than that of disguising the thought of the subject, it is no less than the function of indicating the place of the subject in the search for the truth. For the first trope is metonymy. There's an example, the words 30 sails. For my concern regarding the fact that the word ship was hidden in this statement, seemed by taking on its figurative sense through the endless repetition of the same old example, only to increase its presence, obscured not so much those illustrious sails as the definition they were supposed to illustrate. As we know that metonymy is the part taken for the whole, so if the thing is to be taken seriously, we are left with a very little idea of the importance of this fleet, which 30 sail is precisely supposed to give us an understanding or a knowledge that for each ship have just one sail is in fact the least likely possibility by which we see that the connection between ship and sail is nowhere but in the signifier, and that it is in the words-word connection that metonymy is based. While the other side is metaphor. For metaphor, it has formula as one word for another. The creative spark of the metaphor does not spring from the presentation of two images, that is, of two signifiers equally actualized. It flashes between two signifiers, one of which has taken the place of the other in the signifying chain, the occulted signifier remaining present through its connection with the rest of the chain. So, there's a line, love is pebble laughing in the sunlight. It recreates love in a dimension that seems most tenable in the face of its impending descent into the carrot of narcissistic altruism. We see then that metaphor occurs at the precise point at which sense emerges from nonsense. And for the last topic is the linguistic process of unconsciousness in dreams. Freud gave some examples of dream images such as the unnatural boat on the roof or the man with a comma for a head are to be taken only for their value as signifiers. That is to say, in so far as they allow us to spell out the proverb presented by the rebus of the dream. The linguistic structure enables us to read dreams is the very principle of the significance of the dream. Word demonstrates that the general requirement for the dream's functioning is to continue in the distortion or translation. Following Saussure as the sliding of the signified under the signifier, which always active in discourse. For Lacan, what we call the two sides of the effect of the signifier on the signified are also found on condensation, is the structure of the superimposition of the signified which metaphor takes as its field, and whose name, condensing in itself, shows how the mechanism is connatural with poetry to the point that it envelopes the traditional function proper to poetry. In the case of displacement that we see in metonymy, and which from its first appearance is represented as the most appropriate means used by the unconscious to foil censorship.